Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very senior, highly respected, and well recognized actor from Bollywood talking to us from Mumbai, India. Today, Mr. Arif Zakaria. Arif, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me over and hope we have an enriching chat.
I'm sure we will. I mean, yours is a face I've seen. I can't even imagine how many times and so many formats. But and I don't need to say, but I will for my audience. Mr. Zakaria is an actor. He began acting in theater while in college, moved on to work in television and films, has acted in Darmiyaan, Danced Like a Man, Haunted 3D, Razi, Nanak Shah Fakir, and Freedom at Midnight. His recent release of Freedom at Midnight, which I've just finished watching, is been released on Sony Live, where he has acted as Jinnah. And given his own background, understandably, he has a very vast repertoire of work in films, television, and OTT. So, Arif, my first question to you, what inspired you to start your career in theater while you were in college? And how did theater prepare you for television and films?
I've often said this at several platforms and interviews. I think the profession chose me. I didn't choose the profession.
Okay.
So before I stepped into college, which is Sydenham College of Commerce and Economics
Mm.
in Bombay,
Yeah.
I had no interest in theater and I never aspired to become a theater actor or actor per se. But when I entered college, a lot of opportunities opened up per se. As to the dramatic society in college was very proactive. And I think organically got absorbed in that. Now, what helped was I spoke clearly. I had a relatively decent face and I was confident. So that's how it started. And then after a couple of years on stage in college, I realized this is my comfort zone. I don't know why I didn't experience or do this earlier on. And maybe this is a calling which has come, and I need to accept it and work on it gracefully. So that's how, as simple as that, it started in college. And then
Amazing.
I was a part of several theater productions in college, which the theater group was very active then. And then I started directing plays, acting in plays. And when I was a student, I, through a certain process, got involved with a gentleman called Mir Munir.
Mhm.
And he introduced me to my first, he in fact is the pilot, I would say, who got me the first television break in a serial in Doordarshan called
Mhm.
Chunauti,
Okay.
which is years ago. And that's how it started. So it all, if I can compress all this, it happened in like 5 years of my college life. And then I got philosophical. I was planning to do law.
Hmm.
The government law college, Mumbai, was just across the road.
Yeah.
But then I thought that if opportunities and avenues are opening up, I just need to accept them gracefully and surrender to it. And that's what I did.
Amazing, amazing. And you started in television in the 90s. What were some of the big challenges? Because it was a single broadcaster, Doordarshan. What were some of the challenges in Indian television during that period?
The challenges were the organization was not very good if I look back in hindsight. But having said that, that's a small price to pay for the content they actually produced. People still remember the content of the 80s and 90s.
Mm.
They were unique. There was some great writing happening on television. There were a group of dedicated creative personnel making content on TV in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
They were more experimental than the whole corporate culture, which came about subsequently with the
Yeah.
onset of satellite TV,
Mm.
was not there. So people had a lot of heart in what they made.
Mm.
So that's the good side of it. The bad side, of course, is there was no organization. The scripts were not ready on time. It was a little bit chaotic then to shoot. There were no fixed stars. There were no governing body controlling projects and productions. So that was the flip side. But I think it outweighed the positive factors which I just mentioned. So I look at it as a golden period, really, as opposed to having any negative thoughts about it.
Amazing, amazing. And if you also worked in so many different types of plays, movies, theater. So my conversation today will revolve around a lot of your performances in so many different plays and movies and films. And I wanted to ask you first about Merchants of Bollywood. Can
Yes.
you share an interesting or a memorable story when you were performing in Merchants of Bollywood?
So Merchants of Bollywood, I did in 2005. And I got this opportunity thanks to the casting director of the show, Kwasa Thakur, who's a
Hmm.
very prominent theater. He owns a theater group and a theater person in Mumbai. And I think he saw a film I did called Dance Like a Man and then
Hmm.
introduced me to the people who were putting together Merchants of Bollywood. So it was my first exposure to big mainstream theater. It was an international production
Hmm.
which encapsulated song, dance, drama, theater, comedy, a little bit of singing. Of course, I didn't sing, fortunately.
Hmm.
And then it opened up. I agreed to do it for a lark for 2005. It was a small stint in Australia, but then it was successful, and then we took it to all parts of the world.
Hmm.
So that was my first big exposure with Merchants of Bollywood,
Hmm.
and it was the ultimate theater experience, I should say.
Hmm.
First, you could travel. Second, the inherent amount of discipline you needed to do these shows every single day in different
Hmm.
parts of the world, catering to different audiences.
Hmm.
Um, so it inculcated a great sense of discipline, a great sense of camaraderie because we were all on the road for months together.
Hmm.
So you have no choice but to get along with the people you're working with.
Hmm.
Shared responses, shared reactions, shared histories. So if I look back, it was a great experience, really. Nothing, it kind of changed a lot about my professional outlook
Hmm.
having worked with on Merchants of Bollywood. And then eventually I did it for I think 8 or 9 years after that. And
Right.
we've done about 1,200 to 1,300 shows since then.
Wow. So you just told me, spoke about Dance Like a Man, and that gives me an interesting segue to my next question. In Dance Like a Man, you portrayed a character deeply rooted in classical dance traditions. How did you approach this role, especially since it was in English?
Yeah. So I was fluent in English, if that is your
No,
question.
no, no. I mean, you're
Uh,
talking classical dance and
yes,
English.
yes, yes. So it is based on a very famous play by Mahesh Dattani, very
Hmm.
eminent Bangalore-based playwright called
Hmm.
Dance Like a Man.
Hmm.
And there was a lady, Pamela Rooks from Delhi, who acquired the film rights for the same.
Hmm.
And I think she saw some work of mine again, and Dolly Thakur was the casting
Hmm.
agent, the
Hmm.
casting director, and she put me on, and then she selected me for the part. It
Hmm.
was very traumatic because it was about two classical dancers,
Hmm.
and I had to learn Bharatnatyam
Yeah.
for a good 6 to 8 months.
Hmm.
And the actress opposite me was Shobana, the famous South Indian
Yeah.
actress. And she's a Bharatnatyam exponent.
Hmm.
So dancing with her was very challenging and daunting.
Hmm.
But she was lucky enough to set the pieces. And then she sent me those pieces, specific pieces. And
Hmm.
then she told me just learn them up. Like just physically
Hmm.
do the pieces, nothing beyond that. Don't learn any other intricate dance movements or don't
Hmm.
start from ground zero because you don't have that much time.
Yeah.
Because Bharatnatyam as a discipline takes years
Hmm.
to master or even to understand.
Hmm.
So I just did that. And then again on set, fortunately, she was also, I think, the choreographer to a large extent.
Hmm.
So she and the cinematographer, Sunny Joseph, they shot me where I didn't look that too bad with those dance moves, which I had imbibed.
Hmm.
So it was very strenuous and stressful, but I think I pulled it off. So if you see the film now and you didn't know me, you would perhaps think that, yeah, he's an okay dancer. It's not that bad. But I
No,
know what I went through for the 7, 8 months
I
to
can imagine
prepare
it.
and shoot the film.
Bharatnatyam is not easy at all, but
Yeah, it's not easy. It's
so
not
I'm
easy.
going to certainly after our conversation go and see this film again. But
Yeah.
moving on, you also played a very interesting character of Rustam Setna in Deepa Mehta's Earth 1947, and I've seen that performance, and it was very, very powerful. What drew you to the character of Rustam Setna?
This was my second film, I think. First was Darmiyaan with Kalpana Rajvi, which was my debut film.
Yeah.
And I met Deepa, and Deepa casted me for this role. It was a no-brainer, really, because I wanted to work with Deepa Mehta, who had done Fire early on, very reputed, acclaimed director then. The material she had was based on Bapsi Sidhwa's book, Ice Candy Man.
Mm.
So it was a great story about partition. And just the way it was written, just the people associated with the project, just the way they had a vision with the script and the book. I mean, it was a no-brainer for me to say yes to it. And we shot it in the winter of Delhi in, I don't know when, 98, 99 we shot it. So that was a very memorable, cherished experience. But yes, the people associated with the project and Deepa primarily was the reason why I agreed to do it.
Okay. And you just spoke about Darmiyaan, but your performance in Darmiyaan was very widely acclaimed. How did you prepare for the role? And what impact did the film have on your career?
It had a deep impact because it was my first film. I
Mm.
knew Kalpana Lajmi, the late Kalpana Lajmi, through television. I'd done a TV show with her. And then she sounded me off on this project, but not in the lead role. I was doing a peripheral part in the film.
Mm.
And then some things happened and some actors backed off. And then one fine day, in her very energetic, commanding voice, she called me and said, "Come right now. I want you to read for the main role." Now, I knew the script beforehand because she'd given me the script for that peripheral role, and I used to just read it for a laugh. It was very well written. She was an
Mm.
excellent writer, an excellent screenplay writer. So I went there and went through the paces. She wanted me to do a certain kind of test for that particular role.
Mm.
And the next day she called and said, "You're doing it. You're doing the main part."
Mm.
How did I approach? It was very complex and complicated.
Mm.
Uh, I think the one word answer would be surrender.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
surrendered to her command. I
Mm.
surrendered to the material
Mm.
and just kept reading it. We had little workshops. I recall now with her associate, Simple Kapadia.
Mm.
I used to attend that and we used to make notes about it, go back to her. She kept changing, adding, subtracting, and fine tuning it completely. And again, I landed up on set and just surrendered to the moment, imbibing all the character traits which I had the good fortune of working out 6 months or 5 or 6 months prior to the shoot date.
Mm.
And then, eventually with any such project, you cross your fingers and you hope everything works out. Your homework works
Correct.
out, the
Correct.
vision of the director, the way the director shoots it, and how you surrender to the moment. All that has to be in sync for
Mm.
any performance to work. So I
Amazing.
just did that really.
Fascinating. And from Darmian to the sets of Haunted 3D, can you share an interesting or a memorable anecdote? And how did you prepare for this very, very challenging character that you played in Haunted?
So Vikram Bhatt, I know since my college days.
Hmm.
Again, I had done television with him earlier,
Mm.
and then collaborated on Haunted 3D.
Mm.
And frankly, till then, of course, now my whole overview has changed about haunted films. I was not
Mm.
a great fan of horror films as a genre.
Mm.
So we land up in Ooty, and again, I mean, without being cliched, I couldn't quite understand what he was doing because it was India's first 3D film, horror 3D film. So it was shot
Mm.
with two lenses, and they had a whole host of technical crew from
Mm.
LA. So
Mm.
he just said, "Do what I say, just
Mm.
trust me."
Mm.
So every moment in Haunted, and luckily the film worked. It's become People don't probably realize this. It has become like a cult film. Even today, I meet a lot of people on the streets who have all seen Haunted 3D. But it was purely, I piggybacked on Vikram's word and I believed and I just blindly followed what he told me to do. And sometimes that really works because you can't really comprehend the story, you can't comprehend the genre. And in this particular case, I couldn't comprehend the technical aspect also.
Mm.
So I just surrendered to the moment. I did no homework.
Yeah.
I didn't read the script. The scene was given. I just memorized it and I just did what exactly he told me to do.
Mm.
So a lot of credit for any accolades I receive for Haunted.
Mm.
It's to Vikram, nobody else. I just
Wow.
did what he told me to do. And sometimes that works as the as again the standard acting jargon goes, just shut up and do what the director tells you to do. And hopefully he's got a much larger vision than yours.
Correct.
Most often it works.
What's coming through very strongly is that you're very clearly a director's actor. So
Because it's a director's medium. I
Right.
could have and I could give my inputs, but when I land up on set, I know that this guy or he or she
Mm,
knows a little more than I do because they
absolutely.
frame the shot in a certain way. They have a broader
Absolutely.
overview of the
Mm,
story.
mm,
They know much more the intricacies of the whole project, so on
mm,
and so forth.
mm.
I'm just a spoke in the wheel, really.
Absolutely.
So you kind of use your sensibilities and then you follow advice.
Well said. Well said. Arif, you also were part of an incredible movie, which is now a classic or very iconic, Razi. And
Yes.
I've seen the film twice. I've seen your role very clearly. I watched it again, preparing for this conversation with you. Razi has been a significant film in the recent years. How did you feel being part of a story that resonated so deeply with audiences?
So Razi was based on a book written by Mr. Harinder Sikka,
Okay.
who produced Nanak Shah Fakir, the film
Mm,
you mentioned in my
mm, mm,
introduction.
mm,
And I think due to his efforts, I got the role. He introduced me to Meghna Gulzar,
mm,
and then I got the role. But before that, I'd read the book, and the story was very captivating.
mm,
So again, it's always, as an actor, I'm always seeking to be a part of such stories and such
mm,
ensemble with casting and be a part of these projects. So when Meghna actually confirmed me, I was very happy that, she's, I was looking forward to doing it anyways, because I'd read the book through Mr. Sikka. And it was very well written. It had a lot of inherent, it had a fresh take on the story of India,
mm,
Pakistan. It had very unique characters. It had a great visionary director. Meghna added a lot of her personality to the show, and the way it was shot, the way my character was shot and edited, in fact, surprised me too. Because sometimes what happens, the way the character reacts to another character talks a lot about the journey of that character also.
mm,
So I think Razi also, she very smartly edited,
mm.
and my character came out looking very pivotal and very
Correct.
significant
Mm,
in the entire narrative because he's the first guy who actually doubts the main protagonist.
correct.
And that is where the story trigger point actually begins. So I was
Absolutely.
very happy, very fortunate to be a part of such a project. And then again, once it released, it did well.
Mm,
I still, people still mention Razi and my character. So it's very gratifying, really. I'm just
mm,
blessed.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about your most recent um, OTT film, film or program, Freedom at Midnight. Uh, when you play real life characters like Muhammad Ali Jinnah, how do you strike a balance between authenticity and creative interpretation? And I'd love to get one or any interesting stories from this particular episode of your life.
No, it's a good question. How do I balance authenticity with creative interpretation? Yes, now playing a larger than life and a historical character like Muhammad Ali Jinnah, there is a certain sense of responsibility.
Correct.
Uh, so you have a lot of information about him. It was so the whole show is based on a book called Freedom at Midnight, which
Yeah.
I'd read much earlier as a child. My father had that book in his collection. I remember very vividly. And Jinnah is from Bombay. So one always knew of Jinnah through certain, things. And I remember he had a house at Malwa Hill. And
Yeah.
as children, we used to pass by. My parents always pointed out that, who lived here.
Mm,
So he's present in Mumbai and I'm from Mumbai. So one
mm,
had a certain sense that he was omnipresent in the city of Mumbai.
mm,
But then you read up a lot. There are a few videos which give you a certain external physicality of what the man was.
mm,
Then you form your own notes. And again, here too, the adaptation by Nikhil Advani or his
mm,
team of writers along with Nikhil was
mm,
brilliant.
mm,
The way they wrote Jinnah in the story made it look very dramatic, engaging, and he kind of turned out to be the main antagonist, but they showed a slight humane part also to this character. And again, as I said earlier, anything good comes out with a lot of time.
right.
When we got the script, the shoot, I shot almost 9 or 10 months after I got the script. So, you can work on the script, you can read it, reread it. We
Right.
had a lot of workshops.
Mm,
I formed certain pivotal pilot points about the character that maybe he spoke like that. Maybe he looked like that. Maybe he
mm,
had a command. Maybe his personality exuded
mm,
those traits.
mm,
And then you take it back to Nikhil and his creative team, and I kept bouncing it off. And maybe it works, this doesn't work. So I enjoyed that process, and we went through all that, and
mm,
then formed some sort of character, and then landed up on the set with imbibing your costume and the moment there, and how the cameras play, so on and so forth.
mm,
And then you try and make it work. You try and make it real. And the bigger challenge was, of course, to smoke. I'm a non-smoker,
mm.
and Jinnah was a chain smoker. So that
Correct.
was very challenging
Mm,
to keep smoking in every shot, every scene,
mm,
every suggestion which you give. And cameramen love smoke. They
mm.
lit up the smoke very well. So they want you to smoke more than what actually you want. So even if
Yes.
you're giving your back to a character, they want you to smoke because the smoke filters very beautifully in the lens.
Mm, mm.
So all these challenges you are aware of and
Yeah,
you're conscious of, but that's the challenge. That's the beauty of my profession.
correct.
It's never ending. This quest for just seeking something is never ending, and you just
Mm.
assimilate all that, be happy at the end of the day, and try and make it work.
Amazing, amazing. Let me shift gears and now talk a little bit about some of the international films that you have worked on. And one that stood out for me was Swords and Scepters.
Yes.
How different is working culture in international cinema when you compare it with Bollywood?
At the height of making enemies, I would say it's much more organized if you work in a pure Western work environment.
Mm,
So I've been exposed to it, fortunately, through Merchants of Bollywood,
yeah.
through various foreign productions,
Mm,
including Sword and Scepters. The crew was from United Kingdom. We shot it in Rajasthan and Morocco.
mm,
It was very well organized. You have call sheets. You know exactly what you're doing.
mm,
You know which car is going to pick you up, which is going to drop you. They allocate assistants. You know the point person who to call to if there is any issue,
mm,
professionally or personally.
mm,
They also know when to unwind and shut up. So you have a weekly off where you don't have to call anybody and ask, and you're given instructions very clear. Everything is very clear and laid down. Film production is a science, really, and they've mastered it undoubtedly. So, like, we had a great, I forget his name. He was a great first assistant, but he was a professional first assistant. Here, you have first assistants who are aspiring to be directors.
mm,
So they're very uncomfortable in what they're doing. But there, the first assistant is a professional first assistant. So he pretty much tends to his job,
mm,
which is call sheet, timeline, answering your question. He doesn't have to give you an answer beyond the purview. So very
right.
thoroughly organized.
Mm,
They have different levels of organization, and they hire the best, perhaps, or the most professional, creative people.
mm,
And that is why it was again a very large shoot with a lot of people and manpower involved in so
mm,
many cities, but it went pretty seamlessly, I would
mm.
say. So
Amazing.
yes, the work culture, if you work in the Western world or crews which are non-Indian, are much more organized. Even we are, but we are getting there. We are getting there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, Freedom at Midnight had a great professional outfit.
Mm,
All the
mm.
other productions also had. But I would say we are getting there. We are still imbibing those values and that work ethos from them.
Excellent. I have time for two more questions for you.
Yeah.
You produced the children's film
Yes.
Pinti Ka Sabun. And
Yes.
that was now you were sitting behind a camera. What was the inspiration for you to step into production and how was the experience?
So, because I used to produce plays and I also jointly produced some TV shows on regional channels since the past few years. So, always understood this gambit of production. It's a thankless job, but I've always understood and been around producers. And since I was a producer myself, I always understood how it is done. Now, Pintika Sabun was narrated to me by, again, a theatre colleague and old friend of mine, Pramod Pathak, who eventually directed the film also. So he and I used to meet, we still meet occasionally and just discuss anything under the sun. So one fine afternoon, I remember I was driving somewhere and I picked him up and he narrated the story in the car. And then I said, let's make it. It just appeals to me beautifully. Let's just make it. So we explored avenues. I couldn't get it done through a private producer because the subject was a little a niche subject. So I pitched it to CFSI. It went through the whole screening process and then they approved it. And the only flip side, or the only good thing, not flip side, was they said you shoot it in Uttarakhand,
Mm.
where essentially the story was based. It was based on a short story. So I landed in Uttarakhand. I knew a few people and put the project together. It was very daunting, very challenging because they don't have great budgets on hand.
Mhm.
And again, we hired a good young professional team and we pulled it through. But it was stressful because we need resources to make something good on film because it's an expensive medium.
So,
But we kind of pulled it through and it's there in the CFSI archives. It won a few awards also. So it's a good,
mm,
sweet film. I think you'll get it online, or I don't know where you can access it or see
mm,
it.
mm. Wonderful. And my last question for you, Arif, given the amazing work that you've done across not just in India, across the world, what next for Arif Zakaria? Are there any dream roles or projects that you would love to do in future?
Not really. As you grow older, your dreams get more real.
Okay.
I dream very real dreams now.
Um,
No, I think the trick is whatever you get, you try and make it impactful. It's as simple as that, nothing beyond.
mm,
And I'm not using any cliche here.
yeah.
So I don't have any great, I mean, I was fortunate to get this. We have this season 2 of Freedom at Midnight, which we've shot.
Mm,
I was fortunate to be a part of season 2 of Special Ops Part 2, which is again going to come this year.
yeah.
Then I've done a few small independent films also. So I'm just looking forward to doing more diverse, varied characters and unique characters, really. As simple and sweet as that. I don't have a
Mm,
great larger dream that I want to do X, Y, Z.
mm,
I think whatever I get, I should be able to do that with a lot of heart and a lot of identity and uniqueness.
mm.
And therein lies my sweet dream.
Amazing. So I'm going to ask you one last question again. Looking back, what's the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self as you start off in theater and then movies?
Oh, good question. I haven't thought of it like that. If I look back, my younger self, I would have probably concentrated more on, how do I put it? I don't know. Uh, Understanding the business a little quicker. Maybe making more deeper, meaningful, impactful connectivity with people who I've worked with. Uh, should have done my own publicity a little better.
Yeah,
So, so on and so forth. But otherwise, I don't have any big regret. I believe in just looking forward. Whatever has happened has
absolutely.
happened. But you know
Absolutely.
how, and probably done all the roles I've done with a little more heart and intensity. Now, when you look back at your performances, you feel you could have felt it a little more, done
Mm,
better here and there. So I wish I had the wisdom to do it. But as you know, in hindsight, we are all PhDs.
absolutely. As they say in the world of management, which is the world that I come from, all management decisions are in hindsight 2020.
There you go.
But
You've said it.
on that note, Arif, I just want to say you're the first time I have spoken to a Bollywood actor or a star on my podcast or in my life. Thank you for this absolutely incredible, eye-opening conversation. I've seen you innumerable times on different formats of screens. I haven't seen you in a play, and someday maybe I will. But thank you for talking to me with so much candor. Thank you for talking to me with so much um, clarity about different roles that you have taken on. And as I said, clearly you are a director's actor, which again came out clearly. But what came out very, very strongly is the incredible amount of modesty you have in spite of having such a well recognized face. Thank you again for speaking to me and all the very best to you.
No, thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me, and I hope it was an engaging conversation. Hope
It
to see you
was.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.